Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm glad to have the opportunity to sit down with Associate Professor Dr. Mariana Sueldo. She is an esteemed expert in organizational communication and a valued member in the Faculty of Communication here at Vilnius University. Dr. Sueldo has a diverse background spanning from international communication, teaching, research and even translation in government and European Union meetings. Dr. Sueldo, thank you very much for joining us. I introduced you briefly. If I may ask you to introduce yourself to us, who is Dr. Mariana Sueldo?
Thank you for this opportunity. Well, I am Argentinian, first of all. So if you define a person by his or her birth, you can say that I am Argentinian. That's the first word. A woman, a teacher, a member of a very large family. I was born and grew in a family of 5 siblings, with very hardworking parents and high-seeking professionally and very devoted and dedicated. So with that background, you can imagine that I was really prepared for whatever challenges I would meet in my life. I say this because sometimes you see around that people do not recall or do not have so many happy memories from their childhood, or may suffer from lack of self-esteem or whatever. And I think that I was a very lucky child. I feel lucky still. So all that I lived since birth, I would say, has added up to what I am today. I am an enthusiast of what I do, and I hope that I can pass it on to others as well. That's shortly about me. Okay, so you were born and raised in Argentina, and yes, you're here in Lithuania for more than 20 years. 28 exactly. 28 years. Yes. What led you, if I may ask, to be here to Lithuania from Argentina, thousands of miles away? Yeah, very, very far from here, and even the southern hemisphere. Well, it was a very personal challenge that, off the record, I would tell you about it with beer and coffee or any other drink, if you don't want to have alcohol. So that would be a very personal adventure that I would prefer to set apart from my professional talk here. And but I came here on my own decision, invited by some institutions here to have youth camps and summer activities to boost character building. And then at the same time I looked for a job. So I immediately inserted myself into the labor market here in the educational field. The same I did when I was in Argentina. So when I came here, I had my 2 university degrees in English philology and translation, and some years of experience in teaching. So with that background, I came here and I found a job, and I, from then on, just became part of Lithuania. Mm-hmm. You've been here, as you said, for 28 years. Since 1995. Since 1995. When there were no shops, no brands around, no visual communications, no marketing at all. So for a professional in communication, that might sound like an old movie, mm-hmm, but it was not so long ago, only 29 years ago. So it was quite a contrast. But why Lithuania? Because Lithuania was the country that I was offered to come, mm-hmm, as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. How did this transition from Argentina to Lithuania change you? How was Dr. Mariana Sueldo before 1995? And well, I was not a doctor then, so my doctorate was here in Vilnius University and not so long ago. So when I came here, I was a young English teacher. So the way changes, and there were some similar things. As I said, when I came here, I found a job as a teacher, so I kept on doing what I was doing there, teaching English in high schools. Of course, the students were very different, very introverted and reserved, and no feelings, no emotions at the beginning, apparently, until you crack the code and you start understanding their cultural background and their reactions. That was a challenge for me, because I had been working in very noisy, lively, emotional environments in Argentina. So I had to somehow calm down, be more observant, understand the whys and ways of the Lithuanian educational communities. But what was very helpful is that I found a job in my own field. So that helped the transition, not to be completely out of my environment, let's say. And of course, I was living in a Latin American country with very deep European roots, mostly Spanish and Italian roots, language and culture-wise. And here we also have a very deep European culture, but not Latin European like French, Italy, or Spain. So I was really amazed at Lithuanian culture and the endurance of these people. So for me it was an everyday discovery, how much they suffered, how much they cherish their culture, their values. So I tried to join choirs, cultural activities, and that helped me also to get into the Lithuanian spirit. Mm-hmm. I learned their songs, and I went to concerts and to the theater, so I made Lithuania my own country.
And you've had a diverse background spanning from international communication, interpretation, general management, mm-hmm. a consultant. How do you think this multidisciplinary foundation has shaped you and influenced your work?
Mm. I suppose that in nowadays workplaces, the more varied set of skills you have, the better for you and for the co-workers and for the people you work with or for. My English philology background and translation professional experience is very useful in international context. I have to usually translate in classes or visitors when I have a delegation from other countries, when I go on Erasmus exchange or international conferences. So I suppose that all that I learned through my life is never lost, because you can integrate your knowledge and your skills in everyday challenges. So I don't regret anything I learned, and I'm glad that I had this opportunity. And I suppose that versatility is also a very important asset in nowadays global environment and workplace.
Mm-hmm. You're regularly invited to European Union and government meetings since 2004. How did this experience influence your work in academia, mm-hmm. and how was this experience overall? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, when I came here, I already was a translator, but in Argentina I didn't have so many opportunities to practice that, because I practically finished my translation degree and had very few chances to practice that. So when I came here, Europe is very small, but it's very varied, so there are many events, and I am not so much involved in that regularly now, because I'm much more involved in academic and research work. The most active period was when Lithuania joined the EU, and when Lithuania was the chair of the EU countries. So that was a very busy period, and I had a chance to go to the European Parliament. I mean, to be here, but in the European Parliament meetings, in the Seimas, and many other projects, international projects that took place in Vilnius. So I had to translate. Usually is Lithuanian Spanish, Spanish Lithuanian, but sometimes it's English Lithuanian or English Spanish. It's a very nice experience, and it needs a lot of resilience and adrenaline, because you are under stress and you have to remember the person's speech and try to be faithful to what the person said. There are sometimes funny situations when you can go off track and say what you want, but that wouldn't be very ethical in the profession. I really enjoy it, and I think it's a very good service to when people do not know each other's language. I usually I use it also in my everyday life, but in the profession of a translator, you have the opportunity to learn about so many topics, because you might be asked to translate about cosmetics or about international policy or microfinance. So you have to study the field, learn the vocabulary specific to that field, and prepare beforehand and be ready for emergencies or for unexpected questions or words. So it's very challenging, but I really enjoy it.
Your extensive background and experience suggests a focus on communication. Can you share with us what initially drew you to this field, and what motivated you to study and
continue with this.
To be in communication overall?
When I was at school, I never thought I was going to study communication. And it never crossed my mind when I was still a teenager. I always liked teaching and being in events, and somehow it was in the seeds there, let's say, kind of waiting for it to come up. But when I came here and I started working in a private university, well, teaching business English, and then they asked me if I could also teach cross-cultural communication because I was myself multicultural and multilingual, then I felt the need to go deeper into that. So it was my own initiative to study communication, and I studied a master in international communication in this university, in this faculty. So my first, let's say, contact with communication as an academic field was because I had to teach that, and I felt that I needed to have a justification to do that more professionally. So that was my beginning, let's say. And from then on, I just kept on going deeper and deeper into that, and I'm still here.
You were a student, as you said,
Yes.
in international communication here in this faculty,
Yes.
and now you teach the program. How would you define the international communication?
That reminds me of my entry interview and the entry examination test I had to enter this program, because the definition could be very academic, but if you had to say what is international communication, you can say that it encompasses technology, telecommunications, cultural products, emails, cultural relations, and languages. In fact, we are so much engaged into this every day that it's hard to imagine that there is no international communication. Even a kid in the middle of Zimbabwe can be involved in international communication just because he sees a Netflix announcement. So it transcends borders, boundaries, and it involves, of course, more than two countries, but it also has to do with cooperation, coordination, conflict solving, to achieve common goals or to have greater impact or to get joint benefits. So it's very wide, and it might have very different expressions. So international communication could be now eating sushi in Vilnius, for example. From there to writing a research paper on migration impact into mixed marriages. So it is very broad. You can specialize within international communication.
Mm-hmm. How does this program here, the International Communication at Vilnius University, how does it contribute to the overall success and the growth of the students and their future? How do you think it's preparing the students for their future?
Well, the program itself has evolved a lot since I was a master's student, and I see that the classes and courses I took when I was a master's student many years ago have changed a lot. So now the portfolio or the menu of courses is very different, and it includes almost 50% of different courses that I had then. I think it has evolved in a very positive way because it gives the students the opportunity to have a look into management areas of communication, international or let's say more diplomatic aspect of it, marketing, digital strategies, cultural approach to communication. So I think it's a very well organized program, not because I teach in this program, but I think it offers graduates a very well balanced content that can enable the graduate to work in very different fields, from a ministry to an international company to a media agency. So I think it's very well tailored. I wish I could study the program again.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the message that you would like to convey to the prospective students that may consider studying here in this university, especially for international communication. What would you tell them? Maybe part of what you say just suggest the answer of this question, but do you have anything to add to this? Like what would you like to convey to the students?
Be ready to do some self-study as well, because we have very few classes. At master level, you have a concentration of classes with, let's say, introduction to contents. You cannot cover everything, and students come from very different backgrounds, so all of them have a communication background as a bachelor degree, so professors cannot level up the contents from scratch. So sometimes you have to take for granted that they have done some media studies or communication theory. So at master level, you have to go deeper into the contents, and it might be difficult to catch up. So no stress. What you don't get in the class, you can always get in the library or by reading extra material. And I would say that it's very important for a master student to try to squeeze the time you have and to make the most of the class material and the extra reading, because if you only do the minimum, you are losing a lot. It's like having a club membership that you can go every day whenever you want, and you just go once a month. You don't make the most of it. It's up to you what you get.
As someone who has taught both in corporate settings and in academia, what do you think are the similarities and differences faced by students versus professionals in terms of the challenges of communication?
Well, I suppose that this is a very important question for both sides. You never stop studying and learning if you want to. So professionals in communication, well, I wish they had this desire to always keep learning, not only skills or practical things, but also to go deeper into new discoveries in research. And research should feed practice, and practice should also contribute to the profession. So students, fortunately, nowadays in most studies have the chance to get visits from practitioners who can tell them the real life in everyday work. And many of our professors also have practice in the profession. So there is a close integration, and there is also knowledge transfer. Academia also transfer knowledge to the profession. So students can profit from that and should take the most of it. So if you have the chance to do some practical work in a company while studying, why not?
You teach courses such as crisis communication. In today's interconnected digital world, what do you think are the main challenges in managing communication during crisis?
Well, nowadays I'm not teaching exactly crisis communication anymore, but I'm teaching digital communication. So part of the digital strategies is coping with crisis in general. I suppose the question is a point of values and authenticity. If you are true to your values and the company or the institution or the person enacts the values, and you act with transparency and true to your conscience, then crisis could hit at any time, but the truth always emerges. So trying to cover it with very good PR or very good posts might work for a short time, but the truth will always emerge. And the truth has to also fight fake news. So in this point, those who are ready with the manual for communication management may have it easier to control let's say the issuing part, the sending part of the message. But you have to remember that we have prosumers of information now, so anyone can be a journalist, anyone can produce content and make it viral. So you have to be very close to the stakeholders, all stakeholders, and try to be in a constant dialogue with them. And sometimes you have to be brave enough not to give up, not to yield to manipulation, and it comes to being true to your values and to your purpose as an organization.
You research, educate, you are a translator and consultant, and you have experience in general management. What is the most fulfilling and rewarding for you?
I appreciate when people enjoy either a lecture or a seminar or a session, and that what you gave them helped them improve a bit, even if what they took from you was just a starting point. I suppose that any teacher should be glad that a former student has gone even higher than the teacher himself. that even has grown better or has a higher position because it's life. It's like parents seeing that their kids do better than they did when they were younger. So that's one part. And it's nice too when you find people after so many years and they remember you. So sometimes I go around and they say, "Oh, hello, Miss Mariana, hello, Professor." When you see that there is a connection, even beyond the professional setting, there is a human connection.
So the answer would be educating, probably?
Educating and sharing or mutual learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you also train new researchers and the doctoral supervisors. What do you think are the key skills that are necessary for them to success?
Well, we have been working on trying to find out what doctoral supervisors need, if they think they need something, and most of the results we got from surveys and from conversation is that they need to cope with the changing interest of the doctoral students. So, and the same happens with parents and with teachers at other levels, that the coming cohorts of students have their own interests. So you have to be very open and very flexible, but at the same time have a very clear idea of what a doctoral dissertation is, and be ready not to negotiate quality. But then you have to keep up your own quality to be able to deliver quality. So a doctoral supervisor should be always learning in his or her own field and acquiring new skills, but at the same time be ready to be let's say, outsmarted by the coming generations. Mm. And this is hard to accept, that a supervisee can do better than you very soon. That takes humility. I also tell my students that one of the main skills you need is the capacity to summarize and to select relevant information, because there is so much information that we didn't have 20 years ago. So they have it harder because they have to choose from a wider pool. When you have to choose out of two, it's very easy, one or two. When you have a million, then you have to have a very grounded choice. And the supervisor might have to guide the researcher in this choice, but the ultimate choice is the new researcher. Based on your own journey and experience, what advice would you give to students or academics who may consider studying abroad? What kind of advice would you give to the people who may consider going abroad and establish their life there, maybe? Flexibility and humility. Being open to other people's attitudes and listening. Being ready to make changes, to adapt to other people, embracing the local culture if you move. If you move to another place, you have to first of all learn about that place, if possible the language as well. And I think that we have to avoid being judgmental. Comparing is always natural, but there is no worse or better culture or country. There are always greener grasses somewhere else's, in someone else's garden. So idealizing a country or a place, I think, is a bit naive. It depends on your choice, of course, but I think that flexibility and openness are important.
And maybe not to rush to make a judgment or a frame to the place you are in. So what do you miss the most about Argentina, by the way?
The sun.
The sun.
Because we have very few hours of sun in Lithuania for a long period. Summer here is great, but even in summer you may have not so much sun. So I miss the sun and the light. I would say this is a geographical factor, and a more psychological or sociological factor, perhaps warmness of relationships. We have a much warmer connection there. But on the other side, we have very deep connections here. So maybe people are less emotional, but you have to go deep inside, and emotions are there somewhere. So it's a question of patience. One of the first words I learned here was patience, cantribe. So with patience, you can win the world. So that's another very important feature. And
what do you like the most about Lithuania?
Nature. even though we have a very varied nature in Argentina, I love the purity of nature here, the change of seasons that is very obvious, very evident. It's similar to Argentina in the sense of patriotism. I admire the Lithuanian people's love for their country and symbols and endurance and understanding that it's up to you what will happen with this country. So the responsibility for their country. Maybe some people think that I am too idealistic about Lithuanians, but and I love the language. Mm-hmm. It's a very beautiful language.
How do you find the language? Like, how is it different and special?
Oh, it's very different. First of all, it has cases and declinations. We don't have that. It's like a more difficult Latin. Spanish doesn't have declensions and cases, like genitive, accusative, etc. So that's one thing. Then you have all the accentuation and the stress rules that are quite hectic. And I think I haven't mastered them yet. But it's a very expressive and very logical language.
To wrap this up, lastly, if you were to summarize your approach and your philosophy to communication in a few words.
We cannot not communicate. This is not my phrase. This was Paul Balzavik's work. He has like 5 axioms. One of them is we cannot not communicate. So we're all the time communicating unconsciously or consciously. So I think we should be more responsible for what we communicate, because the other side receives what we say or do or not say or show in a different way. So never take for granted that you really got your message through. So we cannot not communicate.
Professor Mariana Sueldo, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.